The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild took the world by storm over half a decade ago, so anticipation for this highly elusive sequel, The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, was beyond usual perception. Could Nintendo really surpass the heights of Breath of the Wild? Was a commonly discussed topic, and with the game now finally available, the answer seems to be a nearly unanimous yes. However, that unspecified amount is only nearly and not all, because there are always outliers who may find themselves at odds with the overall fan base regardless of how critically acclaimed any piece of media is. For example, despite being a diehard Zelda fan myself, Breath of the Wild did little to interest me, so I was curious to see what a sequel would do, and well, while Tears of the Kingdom is certainly nowhere near my favorite in the franchise, I found it to be an enjoyable evolution of the previous outing. Before we get into the review, we'd like to thank our Patreon supporters for making this possible. Please take a second to check out patreon.com/noisypixel to support independent game journalism. Following the events of Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom picks up with Link and Zelda investigating an ominous ruin beneath Hyrule Castle. However, the two become separated once again after making a treacherous discovery, and Link finds himself with a new right arm. After these opening moments, he finds himself gaining new abilities in his quest to find Zelda. Due to this being an open-world adventure, the story's pacing and impact are largely secondary, with the lack of memorable moments in favor of player discovery across Hyrule. That said, I doubt anyone is strictly playing Tears of the Kingdom for the narrative, but its mediocrity should be emphasized. In that sense, it's similar to the Breath of the Wild, but the introduction this time around was a bit more compelling. The tutorial has Link being guided by the visage of Roru, a member of the ancient Zonai race. Link's right arm is now the individual's, and his commentary is more compelling than the writing from the previous title. His melancholic melding of personal perceptions and some aspects of the past had me invested. Unfortunately, his presence is not a constant past the opening section, and while there are several other characters Link will encounter, they're mostly forgettable and one note. On the other hand, Tears of the Kingdom's gameplay excels, taking the foundations of Breath of the Wild with several new abilities Link can utilize, fundamentally altering how one approaches this open world. For instance, there's Ascend, letting you effortlessly reach higher elevations, and Ultra Hand enabling manipulations of crucial objects. Moreover, Recall is probably the wildest tool at your disposal as it rewinds time on a selected item. Every one of these abilities completely changes the playing field, making Hyrule feel like more of a playground than ever before. Well, a far more dangerous one at least. Aside from these skills having the potential to harm you if used poorly, the challenge level in Tears of the Kingdom appears to be higher. Even seemingly throwaway enemies can take you out in little time, which is likely intentional to account for Link's new powers. The Fuse skill in particular can raise the stats of certain pieces of equipment, so you can battle foes far beyond what you initially consider your skill level to be. The weapon mechanics in Breath of the Wild always had me confused, but thanks to these new additions, I found the experience to be much more enjoyable. Traditional dungeons were mostly absent in Breath of the Wild. The shrines never felt like a substitute for those areas, and the divine beasts, while a step up, just come off as larger shrines due to their brevity and lack of visual differences. Thankfully, Tears of the Kingdom addressed this fault with fully fleshed out temples reflective of past entries in the series. Admittedly, the return of the shrines and their prominent frequency bored me at points, though the arrival of these grander and more thought-provoking maps provided the adventure I was looking for. Plus, you can even have companions fighting by your side in some instances, helping make the journey less lonely than before. In fact, this sequel emphasizes connections and relationships to a far greater extent. Thematically, I love this approach, but as stated before, few of the characters stand out enough to make lasting impacts. Also, in the same realm as the double layer of simultaneous love and hate in this world itself, despite the foundations of a map you explore in this entry having new areas and marked structural differences, it still uses the Breath of the Wild map as its basis. This sadly took me out of the experience at several points, since you'll come across specific locales that are borderline identical, causing a strange sense of unwelcome deja vu. To elaborate, the concept of re-exploring previous games' areas to highlight change is always interesting, yet when their previous appearance was only a single game ago, can get a little dull. This abundant familiarity clashed with the new abilities, creating a jarring mismatch across my entire journey. Even when considering the new islands in the sky that comprised a necessary and welcome identity alteration, I usually found myself yearning for complete newness on the ground. Once again, if this were the third or fourth game in a series and we weren't on this map since the first title, I'd be far more open to this execution. It's just that embracing this idea only a game later feels a little too soon and a missed opportunity. In essence, your tools and skills are fantastic, but the world's familiarity, dullness, and lack of additional landmarks dilute the impact of those implementations. I had other issues that were all minor and did not significantly hamper the experience. For one, as far as I can tell, you can't pause during cutscenes. Switching to the Switch home screen functions as a replacement, but you really shouldn't have to do that for something so basic. Further, there's no option to disable subtitles, which is probably just a minor oversight. On another note, the frame rate is usually stable, impressive given the sheer degree of environmental interactions you can perform. However, when using Ultra Hand specifically, and in my case riding a horse with a harness on, there are some significant dips in the frame rate at times. That said, I always found the Ultra Hand object rotation clunky and cumbersome even as I got used to it. Still, for as much as it seems that I'm nitpicking, Tears of the Kingdom boasts an almost absurd level of player freedom that can't be understated. With Ultra Hand and associated tools, you can craft and make use of inventive contraptions that allow for greater creativity more than ever before. To be completely honest, that alone makes this title worth playing. While Breath of the Wild has a similar general gameplay design of progression solely based on player choice, Tears of the Kingdom amps it up tenfold. It truly feels like you could make anything if you have the patience for these practices. This imagination and innovation are reminiscent of how the very first Zelda game and Breath of the Wild revolutionized adventure, except in a differently applied avenue. The Legend of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom is a thrilling, intricate journey that thrives on its imaginative and adventurous gameplay. Even with the reused map, limited compelling story beats, and unmemorable characters, the unprecedented player freedom and addictive systems pick up the slack. The return of actual dungeons are most welcome, and the attention to delivering a genuine Zelda adventure can be found in almost every moment of this experience. Depending on how you received Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom might rejuvenate your urge for adventure to the point where you could likely skip the first entry entirely and find enjoyment here. The new systems, conveniences, and lack of map familiarity will likely make it far more effective from a pure gameplay standpoint. Still, it's great to see the series continue to innovate and provide a lasting experience for fans. Noisy Pixel is giving The Legend of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom an 8 out of 10. Thanks for watching. This video is brought to you by our supporters on Patreon. Noisy Pixel is run by a group of gamers providing independent gaming coverage through news, reviews, previews, and more. Check out our Patreon to help support our continued growth and subscribe to keep up with all our future content.
Noisy Pixel.